From rising fuel prices to food shortages and broken supply chains, the ripple effects of global wars are hitting consumers everywhere. In this video, Consumer Times breaks down exactly how ongoing conflicts are shaping the world economy in 2025 and what ordinary people can do about it. Welcome back to Consumer Times, the channel that puts your wallet first. I am your host Dr. Arun Kumar. Today, we are talking about one of the most pressing issues of our time, the devastating effect of war on the global economy. Whether it is the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, the escalating tensions in the Middle East, or simmering disputes across the Asia-Pacific, wars are no longer just battlefield tragedies. They are economic earthquakes, and the aftershocks are being felt in your grocery bill, at your fuel pump, and in your savings account. Let us break it all down. The most immediate and visible consequence of any major war is the shock it sends through global energy markets. When Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, oil and natural gas prices surged to multi-year highs almost overnight. Europe, which had been heavily dependent on Russian gas pipelines, scrambled for alternative suppliers. That panic pushed energy prices sky high across the continent and across the world. Fast forward to today, and the situation has not fully stabilized. Conflict in the Middle East continues to threaten one of the world's most critical oil transit corridors, the Strait of Hormuz. Nearly 20% of the world's petroleum supply passes through this narrow waterway. Any disruption here sends oil futures soaring, and within weeks, every consumer on the planet feels it at the petrol pump. Higher fuel costs feed into the cost of everything else: transport, manufacturing, heating, making war a hidden tax on every household. Wars do not just burn buildings, they burn crops, displace farmers, and sever the logistics networks that move food from field to table. Ukraine and Russia together account for nearly 30% of the world's wheat exports and a significant share of sunflower oil and fertilizer. When war erupted, those exports were blocked, disrupted, or weaponized. The result was a global food price spike that hit the developing world hardest, from sub-Saharan Africa to South Asia. India, the world's most populous country, has also felt the squeeze. When global wheat prices surged, the Indian government was forced to ban wheat exports in 2022 to protect domestic supply, a move that rippled through countries that relied on Indian grain. The lesson is clear: in today's interconnected food system, war anywhere can mean hunger everywhere. The pandemic taught the world how fragile global supply chains really are. War makes them even more fragile. Shipping routes through the Red Sea, a critical artery for global trade between Asia, Europe, and the Americas, have been severely disrupted by Houthi attacks on commercial vessels. Major shipping companies rerouted their fleets around the Cape of Good Hope in Africa, adding weeks of transit time and hundreds of thousands of dollars in additional costs per voyage. Those costs ultimately trickle down to the consumer in the form of higher prices on everything from electronics to clothing to medicines. Semiconductor shortages, already a post-pandemic headache, have been worsened by geopolitical tensions between the US, China, and Taiwan. Taiwan produces the majority of the world's advanced microchips. Any conflict there would be catastrophic, not just for tech companies, but for the global economy that runs on those chips. War is inflationary by nature. Governments fund military operations by borrowing and spending at unprecedented levels. That creates more money chasing fewer goods, a textbook recipe for inflation. We have seen this play out in Russia, where the ruble has swung violently, and in Ukraine, where wartime inflation reached devastating levels for ordinary citizens. But even countries far from conflict zones are not immune. The US Federal Reserve and the European Central Bank raised interest rates aggressively to combat post-war inflation, the fastest rate hiking cycle in decades. Higher interest rates mean higher mortgage payments, more expensive business loans, and slower economic growth. War-driven inflation thus becomes a drag on economies thousands of miles away from the actual fighting. Perhaps the most long-term consequence of ongoing wars is the fracturing of the global trading system. For decades, the world operated on a relatively open, rules-based international order. War is dismantling that order. Economic sanctions, export controls, and trade restrictions have become weapons of war. The US and its allies have imposed thousands of sanctions on Russia. China, while not directly sanctioned, faces sweeping technology restrictions. The result is a world splitting into rival economic blocs, Western-aligned economies on one side, and a loser coalition of China, Russia, and others on the opposite side. This bifurcation is expensive. Businesses that once operated seamlessly across borders now face compliance nightmares, restricted market access, and the need to build duplicate supply chains. Consumers bear the cost of this inefficiency in higher prices and reduced choice. In times of economic turbulence driven by geopolitical forces beyond your control, knowledge and preparation are your best tools. Diversify your savings. Consider assets like gold, diversified index funds, or inflation-protected securities that historically weather economic storms better than cash. Track your energy and food spending closely. Small changes in habits can offset rising costs significantly. And stay informed. The more you understand how global events ripple into your daily life, the better equipped you are to make smart financial decisions. War is never just a military event. It is an economic event, a humanitarian event, and ultimately, a consumer event. As long as conflicts rage across the globe, the world economy will continue to pay a heavy price, and so will ordinary people like you and me. Here at Consumer Times, we will keep tracking these developments and translating them into plain language. If you found this video useful, hit that like button, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to understand what is really happening to their money. We will see you in the next one.